In today's video, I want to take a look at what I think is going on in the Nasdaq. I think the cycles have divorced a little bit from the S&P, and I'll qualify that. The intermediate cycle low in the S&P occurred here in August. This is where the market got the most oversold. The McClellan oscillator got oversold, but in the Nasdaq, it sure looks to me like the intermediate cycle low occurred here in early July. The McClellan oscillator got a little more oversold here, but this just looks more like an ICL to me. But it also looks like the cycles are elongating a little bit, especially in the Nasdaq. And at some point here, we're going to need to realign. The Nasdaq will need to realign with the S&P and the Dow. So you can see as we came out of the election night reversal that the daily cycles have kind of started to stretch. This cycle from here to, depending on which one you want to call the daily cycle low, either right here or right here. Clearly this was a very long cycle. This cycle from this bottom to this, I think an intermediate cycle low, again was like 50 days. This was a little bit short for me to consider this a daily cycle low, and if it was, then it was short again for this daily cycle low. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So I think we're just continuing that pattern of long cycles here, 50-day plus cycles. So I think this was probably a half cycle low, and this was the daily cycle low right here. It was mild enough that it did break the daily cycle trend line, but it didn't close below it. But it did turn the 10-day moving average down. So I think the correct way to count this is this was a daily cycle low. This was a half cycle low. And we are now moving down into another daily cycle low, and we're on day 50, I believe. And 95% of the time, a daily cycle low will break below the cycle trend line, and usually it'll close below it. So I'm going to say we probably still got a little bit further to go here. We're not below this daily cycle trend line just yet, but this cycle clearly is extremely right translated, so it should not come anywhere near moving below this previous daily cycle low right here. And then I think once we complete that, and you can also see the TSI is starting to get fairly oversold already. But once we complete this, and I would think that it's probably going to complete this week. If today is day 50, then we're, even if we allow that the cycles are starting to stretch, and instead of a 35 to 45 day cycle, the norm has become maybe 45 to 55 days. Still, at day 50, we're smack dab in the middle of that timing band, and we're pretty close to breaking this trend line. So I would say that we're going to put in this daily cycle bottom sometime this week, and then I think we're going to get one more daily cycle embedded within this larger intermediate cycle. So we've got what looks to me like 2 daily cycles here, and I think we're going to have a third, and that will realign the Nasdaq with the S&P, because I'm expecting an intermediate cycle low in the S&P in January or early February. So I think we're going to get a bottom here sometime this week. Probably going to break this trend line before we do. And then I think we make a move back to new highs. I think the Nasdaq composite at least reaches 7,000. I think the semiconductor index at least tags that all-time high at 1362. But the next daily cycle I would expect to be left translated. So assuming we get a bottom sometime this week or maybe very early next week, then I would expect a top in the Nasdaq maybe on the week between Christmas and New Year's, and probably at least a tag of 7,000 on the Nasdaq composite. This is the Nasdaq 100 that I have on the screen, but at least a test of 7,000 on the Nasdaq composite before we realign the indexes and move down into a deeper intermediate cycle low in January or February. So my expectation at this time is this is just a normal move down into a daily cycle low, same as this right here. And we're very deep. We're on day 50, so it probably doesn't have many days to run now at this point before we find our bottom, and then make that run to at least 7,000 before this intermediate cycle tops.